Thanks for joining us on this edition of Three Little Pigs. I'm Dan Marion, joined today by my brothers Brian and Jim Marion, who collectively we've been in real estate for over 60 years, which is a long time and makes me feel old. So I'll move back a little away from the camera so I look a little better. But what we're going to focus on today is some of the biggest challenges that are facing the sellers and then also the buyers. So let's start in San Francisco. Brian, what do you see as the biggest challenges that sellers are facing right now?
Well, the challenges facing sellers, I think, are coming from a couple of different fronts. What we're seeing is a lot of the sellers that were under contract prior to the stay-in-place orders is a lot of extensions of contracts that were supposed to have already been closed. There's been some forms introduced by the various realtor associations out here, essentially giving extensions of time, even if there might not have been some left due to the COVID situation. We're also seeing a decrease in offers just because there's also a decrease in inventory and decrease in activity as a lot of buyers trying to figure out what their next move is.
And Jim, what about in Colorado, sellers' biggest challenges?
Just getting people into the home still. The governor's shelter-in-place order it's going until Sunday, and that's basically stated that any marketing-related functions we're not able to do. So we're doing virtual tours up until Monday. Monday, we're allowed to do limited showings with basically 2 other people in the home with the agent maximum. So that means no overlapping showings next week, no open houses, things like that. So right now, it's the most difficult thing I think from a listing agent's perspective is reporting on activity to our clients as to how much activity they're getting on their showings, because it's all virtual tours at this point, and there's really no good tracking mechanism for that.
Yeah, and I think in Chicago, we're still, some of the challenges that our sellers are facing, I mean, we're still considered an essential business, so allowed to do the showings on it, but it's just getting in there, and especially on any multi-unit building, where we can't even ask a tenant to, intrude on that. Brian, what in San Francisco, what about some of the buyers' challenges now? What would you say is paramount?
Well, I think right now with the challenges facing the buyers, it kind of correlates to some of the stuff you guys touched upon is the inventory, getting access to the inventory. There's currently no showings on a lot of the properties out here. So it's causing buyers to have to make decisions more sight unseen. And that's kind of, I think, slowed down some of the buyers who, aren't kind of ready for this, investment of 7-8 figures, depending what it is out here, where they don't really have that same visceral experience of, laying eyes on it, seeing condition, getting some of these things that you only get from a firsthand walkthrough. So I see that continuing to face the buyers, until some of these shelter-in-place restrictions are lifted. We're also seeing just overall a lot less to pick from, down as much as 80% in some markets. So, a lot of buyers aren't ready to settle for the few things out there, and we see a lot kind of pausing. Just kind of waiting to see what happens, to get over these challenges.
And Jim, Denver?
Yeah, a little bit of like what Brian said, a little bit of a leap of faith is what's required on buyers' parts these days, because they have to do their choices off of those virtual tours. Once we get under contract, a lot of times what we're trying to structure is a 24-hour escape clause. Once we're under contract, we can see the home in person, so we've got that escape clause to do it. But, another challenge like Brian kind of has is a lack of choice. In the week before we had the shelter in place, we were seeing 1,500 new listings come on the market. The 4th week into this whole shelter in place, we saw 700 new listings come on the market. So it's over a 50% drop in new listing activity. And, I kind of had this prediction that after about 2 or 3 weeks of sheltering in place, people would begin to get over the novelty effect of the whole thing and start to realize this is the new normal. And I felt that the market would start to, shake back up in that regard. And it certainly is seen that way. But, what the challenge really with my buyers now is there's just not many choices to even get excited about in some cases. In some price points, we've got plenty of choices, but in other ones, it's slim pickings.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things in Chicago we're noticing too with, inventory, we've noticed around 40%, so similar numbers, but it's just the lack of options out there for the buyers right now. And so I think you are seeing that push, and it's a tightening of the inventory out there that's pushing it back towards the seller's market a little bit with this going on. Now, with those challenges always create opportunities, right? So Brian, what about for your sellers in San Francisco? Where do you foresee opportunities lying, or where are they seeing opportunities?
Well, there, you know, although there's a lot of people affected negatively by the situation, there's also a lot of people that have a lot of resources and they're looking to deploy those resources. So we've seen actually some of our clients getting much more aggressive right now, looking for those opportunities, looking for those sellers that maybe, you know, we're holding out for a top dollar, but they're in a good equity position and they're willing to just kind of cut their losses. So we are seeing some discounting in certain situations and some motivation, you know, from the sellers to entice the fewer buyers out there right now to pull the trigger on what they're trying to sell. So there's some good opportunities there. You know, if you're ready to go, you know, we are seeing some troubles on the financing front with the buyers. We've had a couple deals recently where the banks have, you know, paused the loans. So I think as some of the finance buyers face those problems, you'll see more leverage for the cash purchasers and more opportunities for those who have the resources to execute quickly.
Yeah, the cash purchasers are always going to have a little bit of an upper hand, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, what about for you? Where do you foresee buyer or seller opportunity?
Well, I think, you know, looking at a few of the market stats, the back on markets has finally dropped to levels below when the shelter in place order kicked in. So we're seeing less contract fallout than we did before this whole thing started, you know, but that's taken 4 weeks to happen, you know, so the first 3 weeks that it happened is certainly rough. We're seeing more, you know, back on market deals fall through. Our average sale price is still higher than it has been in past years. So even if the market dips slightly, you know, even a few points, we'll still be ahead of the game. You know, we already gained about probably 2% in appreciation before this began in 2020. So there's some padding basically in home values. And then the days on market is less in past years than it was in past years. So we're still seeing it be a quick market once you get in, you know, it takes about 15 days to get under contract still. So we're a very healthy market from a lot of fundamentals, and the limited inventory, I think, really makes it still a seller's market in a lot of ways, even though there's pain points involved right now.
Yeah, I think what a lot of sellers have to realize is they might be taking a little bit of a hit now, but if you look at where the pricing is historically compared to like the 07, 08 recession, it'd still be an exit nearer at the top. So I think there's still a lot of people that realize that.
Yeah, and I think that's what some people are realizing is, you know, the price so far, prices aren't dipping as much as some people are anticipating. I mean, Jim, do you agree with that statement and what Brian had said?
I don't think there's really anyone inside the real estate industry who can, with a straight face, say that they expect prices to drop much. I see a lot of chatter on these like investor websites that aren't real estate focused from people who think that they're going to go Chicken Little and they're going to start to see massive drop-offs in home values. Perhaps in some weaker markets where there's, you know, like Las Vegas comes to mind with its focus on hospitality, Orlando comes to mind with its focus on hospitality. But I think fundamentally in a lot of markets, there aren't really many like coal towns anymore. There's a lot more diversified economies. And the fact that the builders have underbuilt every year because they got burned so bad from the 2007, 2009 kind of fiasco, they have not been building enough. So we don't have a lot of new inventory stock. And there hasn't been anywhere near enough of the resale market for inventory levels. So everywhere you look, there's been low inventory that's been plaguing most markets for the last few years. And that's now become a strength for our market resiliency and price.
Yeah, and I agree. And now we're starting to finally see inventory in a couple of the places. And I'm thinking like Old Town in Chicago, for example, it's gotten so tight where you are seeing the showings, even with, you know, a lot of people who've paused on the showing, coming back out, looking at it and seeing like, hey, this is my only option if I want to be a buyer right now. And a lot of them want to get out of the condos and some of the other larger apartments they're in. So Brian, any other opportunities out there that you foresee in this marketplace currently?
Well, I think we're seeing some opportunities is with a lot of the like development sites for sale and stuff where there might have been people going to work to build, you know, additional homes, but maybe they're too highly leveraged with financing and now they're having trouble being able to execute these projects. We're also seeing kind of a big pullback on some of the areas, big projects with Google and some of the other major tech companies. So we do anticipate that kind of affecting things some, but a lot of the builders are still just optimistic, and it takes a while to build product out here and to make the new housing units with all the challenges in California. So a lot of them are if you're looking more than just a few weeks and a few months down the road, you're looking a few years down the road and you're playing for the long term, I think everything will be okay.
Okay. And Jim, any last parting words?
You guys are all awesome. No,
Yeah.
the market is really coming back to life now. I've got 4 appointments already booked for next week, back in the saddle essentially. And it seems like all the people who are talking about listing with me, we're not even talking about COVID-19 issues until, 8 questions in. The people who need to sell now still need to sell. They still are focused on that. And I really feel that a lot of the novelty factor of this whole coronavirus thing has worn off a bit, and people who are serious about buying or selling are basically focused on the task at hand.
All right. Well, perfect. We will end on that optimistic note on the market. So we want to thank you for joining Three Little Pigs this week. Any questions? Our info follows. And thanks again. Have a great one.